people are, I think, taking fewer vacations. Even in the before times, people didn't often take the vacation time allotted to them. And there's been plenty of studies about that. But I think now there's this sense of, can we really afford to go? What happens if I do go? People don't want to deal with the hassle of, especially going to a different country, what the requirements are for COVID. So I think that more people are doing the sneaky staycation still.
Yeah. So it must be interesting for you because throughout all of your editorial history and experiences, you have covered potential recession.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we're calling it today. Inflation, a pandemic, wars. How has that been through your career? Do you see these all as great, incredible learning experiences as you cover them and try and connect your readers to the news topics at large? Or do you see yourself growing as a person with every time you cover these types of stories? How has your job impacted just your perspective on life?
There's nothing like being a veteran of an industry, certainly. And because I'm 105 years old, in dog years, which is, media years, dog years. I have been a business reporter for, I think, the first .com bust.
Wow.
Then, certainly the 2009 recession, and then through now. So, we're looking at 20 plus years of business coverage. And there's nothing like that long view to get some perspective. As in, this too shall pass. It's very challenging to be where we are now, and certainly we haven't had quite the perfect storm that we have now. But I feel that out of the last recession, a lot of innovation happened. We got a lot of new tech companies emerging, and certainly a lot of new technology along with it. If you think about, the late aughts, half the stuff we have now came out of that time. So I do think that we have an incredible opportunity right now to be creative, and nothing like a recession to kind of force you to think about things creatively. When you don't have the resources to put into something, you've got to figure out how to.
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating about you and your career and the history that you've had over the decades of covering all of this news is you really have gotten to see and live through everything and report on what's exactly happening. And so many of us that are in, a single industry or a single role don't always get to have that perspective. So as, a woman executive, have you seen just the changing landscape change the way that the profession sees women executives in the workplace? Do you see more opportunities for us now, or do you think we're still battling the same challenges that we've had for the last 20 years, just in a different economic or geopolitical climate?
The latter, for sure. And I think that some of the challenges that I faced personally when I was growing my career, I was very early to the remote work situation. I was a sandwich generation. I was taking care of my ailing father and a small child. And I was working from home a couple of days a week. And this was early days for this. People didn't quite know what to do with the fact that I wasn't in the office, but I was available.
Right.
And it was really, really challenging. And I think that it took the pandemic to kind of shatter this notion that if you're a caregiver, you can still give everything to your job and do a good job. It's not like it has to be one or the other. That said, it's definitely like you're in the hamster wheel and the struggle is real. But I think that we've definitely had the opportunity for a reset in the way that we think about female caregivers, specifically as they rise through the ranks in their career.
Well, and throughout the pandemic, we just saw study after study that women were dropping out of just working in general to take care of families who were home, that were quarantined and couldn't go anywhere, whether it was parents or children. And then as we started to come back to work now, someone even asked me this morning, they said, well, it seems like a more level playing field, but what about these people that were hired remote, men or women?
Mm-hmm.
How do they still stand out in the workplace when some people are physically in front of their teams and their bosses, while others are completely remote and still having the stress of managing the household activities at the same time the work activities are happening? Do you think that we're going to remain in a hybrid environment now moving forward and face a different set of struggles of standing out from a remote perspective?
Yeah, I really do. I think that this is something that's been top of mind with particular regards to underrepresented groups in the workplace. And that's women, people of color, people with disabilities, just the people who have taken this opportunity to kind of reset and allow themselves to work at a more reasonable pace, especially people with disabilities. Like they're in their own homes, so therefore they have those accommodations and don't have to rely on an employer. But, you know, just for working parents, not having to commute, you can be at your kid's soccer game or pick them up from school. And so that's been a really interesting paradigm shift. But I do think the proximity bias is real. And leaders have been sort of backed into this corner of workers really want that flexibility. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, they really needed to see that this could happen. I know from my own experience. And I think that now it's just a matter of, do you have a leader who's actually visionary enough to see that people can get their jobs done without being under the eye?
Right.
and kudos to them who are able to say, yeah, I'm going to give you these deliverables. You give them to me by a certain time. And that's the way we're going to measure your success.
Yeah.
That part of it remains to be seen. But I do think hybrid is
here to stay.
Yeah.
So you've been so successful, you know, given the early days of remote work, and we've all, or at least many working women have gone through that phase where life happens and you do what you need to do to take care of your family. Do you think if you were remote back when it was more accepted, that would have changed your career or trajectory at all?
Absolutely. I had to step away from my full-time job in book publishing because that was my first chapter. And I went back to my journalistic roots and became a freelancer. And freelancing is wonderful, but you really have to hustle, of course, and the hustle is real. And you also have to be really careful managing your finances and make sure that you're actually, you know, paying your taxes and putting away for Social Security and actually saving for retirement. And that's something that a lot of freelancers don't often think about. You're just managing your area of expertise, but you're not actually managing the financial part of
business.
It. And so, you know, I'm not terribly proud of this, but there were a number of years where I didn't save for retirement. And that kind of puts me behind the 8 ball.
Got it. Yeah.
You know, and that's a real struggle for a lot of women who do drop out of the workforce because they're not saving anything.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for someone that's in a situation similar to what you've been in or that many of us have been through as far as how to prepare? Is it around savings or creating a long-term plan and making sure that you take care of the next few steps?
Yeah, 100%. I think that working with a financial advisor is super, super important. And even if you're putting $10 a week away, it's better than zero. Yeah. And I know that caregivers never put themselves first, but it really bears repeating. You must think of yourself first. Put your own mask on before you assist others.
So hard.
And that goes across the board. Like you have to maintain your well-being. You have to maintain your physical health and you have to maintain your financial well-being.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. And you're so spot on about caregivers putting themselves last. As I reflect on the last few days when I've gotten up in the middle of the night to take conference calls so that I could still be available for different initiatives. And it does take a toll on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sleep is important.
I believe once you hit a certain age, you're required to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night. Have you heard this?
I can do on less than that. And I think it's because of my advanced age, not going to lie. And I think having kids actually trained me out of getting, a solid 8, 9, 10 hours. I could never sleep that long again.
Yeah. On the weekends, I wake up at 6:37 in the morning, which makes me very angry because I'm like, it is Saturday, but I'm still waking up that early. But then you look at it and you have so much more to do. But I think about my grandparents when I was little and would stay at their house, and they would wake me up early in the morning when I was a teenager and wanted to sleep until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So maybe being able to stay up or wake up early is just a benefit of becoming more experienced from an age perspective.
Absolutely. I get up at 5 every day without an alarm. And
that's amazing.
And it was not difficult to make that transition, but I find that those couple of hours, especially if I am coming into the office, because I do come in 3 days a week, that it gives me sort of an easy entry into the day.
Yeah.
And yes, I will answer email and I will check our analytics and make sure that all of the posts that we're supposed to publish first thing in the morning are done.
Right.
But, then I can, have my coffee and take my time.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice
And that me
transition.
time is so important in the
Totally.
morning,
When
just
it's
to
quiet.
get ready for the day. There's been so many books about how to prioritize your time in the morning to have the most productive day.
100%.
So you mentioned that you had a small child years ago. I'm assuming they're not so small anymore.
Yes.
But one of the cutest stories from my kids that I can remember is I was speaking at a conference in San Diego, and I brought my, at the time, 6-year-old daughter. She wanted to watch. So she stood at the back of the room. And after I was done with this speech, I said, does anybody have any questions? And she raised her hand in this room of about 500 people, and they gave her a mic. And I just
goodness.
Oh no. And she said, Mom, I just want to know, someday can I get to do this too? Because you sounded really good. And the entire everyone's heart melted and everyone turned around. And I credit her for any success I've had in my career after that as the setup. But it was at that point that I realized that the way we behave just in our normal lives influences our children pretty immensely over their careers. So what do you think? I mean, do you agree that just the way you behave has an unexpected or unintended influence on how your children can grow up and the just life lessons and perspective they get?
I have an interesting story about this, actually. So for years, because I had internalized this stigma of you must not be really working if you're also taking care of your children. And because I was a freelancer, I didn't tell anybody that I even had children. And one of the magazines that I was writing for back in the day, I remember having to go there and pick up my check, and I had the kids with me that day. I don't remember why, but it was the middle of a summer afternoon, and we walked in, and the publisher was like, oh, hello. Whose children are these?
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, mine. And that really impressed both of them because they saw me. I was working from home. They would see me working around their schedule. I would do interviews in my car while they were, in ballet, and I would be filing stories while I was on the bench outside the dressing room.
Right.
And so they knew that I was working a lot.
Right.
And this was a surprise. And so fast forward, they're adults now. Several years ago, we were having a discussion among the editors, and they were saying, do you know anybody who's ever not said that they had kids at work? And I was like, and so the upshot of it was they really wanted to hear from the kids' perspective.
Oh, wow.
So my daughter actually wrote an essay for Fast Company about how it made her feel to find this out. And it was a little tough, to be honest. And, the ensuing years, once that dam broke, I sort of very sparingly would talk about my kids, but really not very much at all.
Interesting.
And, now, of course, it's fine.
Yeah.
And very proud to say that they were both gainfully employed and off my payroll. So I think I did something right.
That's a huge accomplishment.
It
I can say
is.
that firsthand. So congratulations.
Not even the phone plan.
Wow.
Yes, that was really key.
That's the last piece. I feel like the phone plan is the last part of it.
It usually is, but it is off my payroll. So, but yeah, I think that, it was hard to read. She did not show it to me before she filed it to a different editor.
Oh.
So that person person had come to me and said, do you want to read it before it goes live? And I was like, no, I'll wait to read it with the rest of the public.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. So that it does definitely make an impact. Yeah. So on the one hand, they were learning a work ethic, but on the other hand, they were learning what it meant to be a working mother.
Yeah.
In a time where it wasn't always accepted.
Yeah. So. And I can relate to what you said so much, because I want to say the first 10 years that I was on Facebook, it was photos of me without my kids at work events, very specifically selected and curated, so you couldn't tell how old I was, if I had children or not, if I was married or not. It was just a professional picture with accomplishments from a professional perspective. And
I'm glad to see that we're moving away from this, and that talking about kids at work is much more accepted. Being able to leave in the middle of the day because you have those commitments is much more accepted.
Yes.
I don't have to go hide in my car to take an interview, but it's unfortunate that it kind of came late for me. But anyway, I'll take what I can get now.
I agree. It's nice. And I will say sometimes, you'll see salespeople working from home that have young babies, both men and women. And when the babies come in the picture, the sale gets closed. So I kind of feel like there might be a better way to use the children from a work perspective.
And mine were pretty cute, not just because I'm their mom. But I tell you what, though, the juxtaposition of when my husband would take kids to work with him.
Oh,
that was never a question. He would just take them. When my older daughter was in middle school, she would go meet him because it was within walking distance of his office, and she would spend the afternoon there. Everybody was fine with it. It was more like, oh, look at the man with the children, and for me, it was not the same experience.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, someone recently asked me if you believe that you can have it all. Is there, as a working mother, is there such a thing as having it all? And I really had to think about my answer, because it's just the way that I've lived my life. Is you just manage everything and you find happiness in many different ways. But I'd love to know what your perspective on the answer is. Do you think a working mother can have it all, or do you think there's trade-offs?
I think all is a trade-off. Just the way that we are absolutely inept as humans to really successfully multitask, and that has been scientifically proven. I think that you can do this thing well in this discrete little period of time. You can do this thing well in this discrete period of time. So it's not to say that you can't be good at all of those things and give 110% to all. You just can't do it all at the same time.
Right.
Then you become the cat in the hat with the, fishbowl in one hand and so.
Yeah.
But I have had a solid career that I'm proud of, and I have raised two lovely adults now. And like I said, I've got that measure of success is right there for me. So is that all? Sure. And I've been married for approximately 500 years. So some people would consider
400 years of being single before you got married. We'll save that for the next interview. What you did in 400 years. It's got to be a couple vampire stories in there somewhere.
Yeah, that and we met when we were basically children. So it's, but that for some people, that is a measure of success. Long-term relationships are hard. So
long-term anything is hard.
Precisely.
Long-term anything is hard. Well, this is really great, but let's switch gears slightly on. In your great wisdom,
you flatter me.
What advice would you give someone who's just entering the workplace? I get a lot of questions, especially this time of year, from people who are just graduating college. They're in their senior year of college. They're doing internships, and they're trying to figure out how do they best position themselves for a career. I'd love to know what advice you would give somebody that's an intern or just graduating, looking for their first career, especially given the job market right now.
The job market right now couldn't be better because they would essentially have their pick. I think of a lot of different types of jobs. I would say, money is important, but it's not everything. So if they are looking, at different industries and, different types of positions, just to really be sure that that's a good fit for what they enjoy doing for minimum of 8 hours a day. And those 8 hours can be different hours in the day, but you really should like it. I'm not saying, oh, love your job, because there's always going to be days where it sucks. But, enjoy the people that you're working with. Feel like you can have a conversation. I wouldn't say like, make sure that you can go have a beer with them. That's kind of brotopia.
Right.
But just, can you actually speak to them? Because communication at work is the foundation. If you can't talk to your colleagues, you can't get anything done.
True.
So look for that. Look for a reasonable amount of money, because you just don't know what the next step is going to be. And above all, be confident. I think that especially, again, for underrepresented groups, just use your voice. You belong in that room.
Yeah. Tell
yourself that. You belong there. You belong at that table. And I know that I'm speaking from a place of privilege, being a white woman, but I had this incredibly inspiring opportunity to talk to a bunch of college students who were coming in for like a half-day workshop, and we were hosting them at Fast Company. And they were all underrepresented groups, and they were on fire. And that was my message, was like, be loud, be proud. You belong here.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
And I really hope that was the takeaway from the day. They were networking and just kind of getting to know each other in different types of organizations. And I think that it was fantastic to see them taking their first steps. It's like when your kid takes their first steps. It's wonderful.
That initial sense of confidence and acceptance, I think, in the workplace is so important for so many people that are just starting their career, getting into it. And you used a great word, belonging, to make it feel like you belong, like really makes a big difference and an impact. And I think back to places where I've gone, whether it was in high school or college or, throughout my career, where you don't feel like you belong. And it does hurt your confidence when you're standing in the corner thinking, why am I here? To get that courage. So what advice would you give somebody who needs that courage to share their confidence?
I mean, obviously you have to read the room. There's, place for everything. But if you feel like you're not being heard, don't be afraid to just repeat what you said. Don't let somebody else take credit for your ideas. I think that's super important. And I think that, women in particular tend to not put themselves out there, or if they do put themselves out there and say something and then somebody else swoops in and co-opts that idea, they'll just kind of sit back and let that happen. There are ways to insert yourself back into that conversation. Right. Thank you for repeating what I just said.
This is Prospire's Soaring to New Health podcast. I'm your co-host, Chris Mladenovic.
And I'm your co-host, Dan Krogan. Whether you work in the payer or provider side of the healthcare industry, or are a client or a friend of Prospire, you're sure to learn something new every month when you tune in.
And then the attention comes back to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. And, you don't have to be like weirdly aggressive about it. Just, in a neutral tone. Yes, thank you for reiterating my idea. As I was saying.
I love that. I think I might use that later at a meeting.
Please, I'll be here all day.
What are your thoughts around networking? How important it is to create a network, to build a network, to rely on your network as you go throughout your career?
Hugely important. And you really just never know how you might need to make that connection again. So having been working for as many years as I've had, I still talk to some of the people that I worked at, in my very first 2 jobs. And that has been proven very useful. Even if I'm not doing exactly those things anymore, those connections. Hey, if I'm working on a story, like, Do you know somebody who might know something about this thing? And for a reporter, that's invaluable, but really for anybody, because you just never know when you're going to need an introduction to get your foot in the door. So, fire up the LinkedIn profile, start reaching out to people. I think the most important thing, though, is to make sure that you're not doing it in such a way that you're not giving the other person something in return. That is really key, because then people just feel like, oh, well, you're just like checking a box.
The only time she reaches out is when
you need something. Yes, yeah, exactly. Like remember something, take notes like about what they're doing. And it doesn't cost anything to just say, hey, hope your job is going well. You know, what's going on for you?
Yeah.
Every once in a while. I think the network that we're able to manage is about 150 people, where you like can remember everybody's name and what they're doing. That's a lot of people, though.
That's a lot of people.
When you think about the offshoots of how that 150 people have. Yeah. So it's definitely worth doing, and in person if you can. But certainly, Zoom calls everybody's used to now.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Well, at least we can have digital communications without the handwritten notes, although those are nice and over the top. I have stationery at my desk, because that, I think, for people that are really special, deserve a quick little thank you. Thank you card.
Somebody that's gone above and beyond like that. I mean, we were talking about this the other day, that some of us even still have paper file folders with little notes tucked in there. When you're having a bad day, it's really good to go back to that and say,
absolutely.
Somebody praised you for something or thanked you for something.
Yeah.
Just instant smile.
Back in one of my very first jobs at JCPenney, we had a team exercise where everybody wrote one complimentary thing about each person on the team.
Nice.
And they took them all and they put them on one piece of paper and put them in a picture frame, which is still many, many years later at my house. And I will walk by and I'll remember that at one point in time, someone thought I was very nice or smiled a lot, and it's really simple things that can change your perspective and just give you a sense of happiness and confidence and cheer you up. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that confidence building exercise, just pull out those little thank you notes, or even just remember a time where somebody expressed gratitude to you and know that you made a difference. That should be,
Absolutely. Well, Lydia, it has been amazing having you on the show today. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, it is stepping up. When you're stepping up and being the amazing self that you are for all 400 and something years of your life, what are the shoes that you like to wear? Heels, flats? Did it transition?
Oh, the shoes. So I shared with Adriana my shoe story, which was written in the before times.
Okay.
There was a rash of female founders that were starting companies that made comfortable high heels.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I love heels, even though I am tall. I like to be taller. And I was going to take them for a test drive, and I would walk a mile and see how my feet felt afterwards. So I think I tried like 6 different pairs of shoes, and it was August. So it was hot.
No. Yeah.
Which is always problematic. But anyway, walking in heels, I feel like $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And the side piece to that story is, I ranked them and, was talking about just my general enthusiasm for high heels. And on Twitter, an editor-in-chief of a magazine that should not be named commented about, not to me directly, but just said, I can't believe that women feel like they still have to wear shoes like that to, deform their feet and attract the male gaze.
Oh my
So I'm thinking, this person who is fairly high up there, editor-in-chief of a very well-known magazine, took the time to basically subtweet me. That was weird in and of itself. Now, I identify as a non-binary person,
Mm-hmm.
so I do not think about male gaze. The only gaze that I have on my high heels is the one that I do when I look down and like my feet.
Exactly.
So, I thought, well, is this really the hill you want to die on? So, but, talking about foot deformities, one thing that I did want to point out was that my sister, who has never danced ballet, I danced for almost 15 years, and who does not wear high heels, actually had foot surgery at age 24.
Wow.
And I have not.
Wow.
So, so both of those things debunked. But anyway, high heels, whenever I can get them. Right now, I knew that I was going to have to do a lot of miles today because I did some walking earlier, so I did not wear them. But.
Yeah. Well, there has been a shoe company stalking me on Facebook and Instagram, supposedly the most fashionable and most comfortable high heel shoes for women who walk over 8 hours a day. So I'm debating on whether I just jump in and buy a pair to see. But I'm also a big fan of heels.
Then you should read this piece because some of them were, I still wear.
Really?
Yeah,
I definitely have to
a very classic pair of black pumps with that little skinny curved heel. They're very beautiful and they are very comfortable. 3-inch.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, I did find out. I was at an ad agency for a while, and our team, we created a shoe challenge. Who could wear the highest heels? Now, because I am extremely competitive and I like to win everything, I did research to see where do you buy the highest heels. And I'm not going to name the types of stores where you can find extremely high heels, but I did show up and I was asking a lot of questions from some professionals who told me that if it's over 3 inches, 3 to 5 inches, comes with a little platform on the front of your foot, which makes it much more comfortable for the heel to work. So it's the 2 to 3 inches that actually are the painful ones.
Except if you have the cushion on the inside, which these particular ones do. And there was an extra cushion under the ball of the foot.
That's so key.
That's the part that strikes. Key. So that was really key. Yes. But Alexander McQueen with those lobster claw shoes. Remember those from years ago? Yeah, absolutely. Lady Gaga wore those and fell off them.
Yeah, and fell off them. There's some really crazy looking heels that I think should be saved for
just the museum piece.
Just the museum pieces, absolutely. But Lydia, thanks so much again.